And
we're all very old. We don't hear well.
Well, good evening, everyone. We will call the special city council meeting to order. First order of business is roll call and determination of the quorum. Charlene.
Sasso. Here. Nordstrom. Here. Scott. Here. Clayton. Here. Peterson. Here. Doyle. Lewis. Here. Roberts. Here. Wright. Here. Lorente. Here. We have quorum.
Okay, and now we will do our invocation, and Alderman Ron Sasso will lead us in the invocation. Everyone, please rise.
God, thank you for bringing us all together and for everyone that is here today. And I ask that you give us wisdom, you give us guidance in all the decisions that we have to make this evening. I ask all these things in the name of your precious Son, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That one is good. Amen.
Okay, a couple of announcements before we get started. If anybody has cell phones, if you could please turn them off at this time. And we have the school district checking on the availability of the room upstairs, and our fire marshal might get excited about having so many people in this room. So in case that happens, we're going to be opening the overflow room. It's not available? Okay. All right. Hopefully the fire chief doesn't find out about our meeting. So. All right, so this is a meeting that is this is a special city council meeting, but it is a Vision Fund committee meeting, and it is chaired by the city council president. So I will be handing over the gavel to Bonnie Peterson, our council vice president. I will be sticking around for the entire meeting, and while Bonnie is assuming the chairman position, Pauline, if you could begin with your presentation. Introduce our City Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption, and she's going to talk about the Vision Fund update and give us a general update on the balances and the projects.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did send this spreadsheet out to the council. Some of you received it late Tuesday, and the rest of you received it today, and I apologize for not getting it to you all at the same time. I updated the revenue projections, assuming a 3% growth based on 2011 actuals beginning in 2013. If you look at, I'll get the pen out. This column here, it actually, for 2012, we have a projection of just shy of $10 million in sales tax revenue. And quite honestly, in 2011, we received more than that. So that is probably a low projection for this year. However, at the time, that was the best estimate that we could come up with based on 2010 actuals. So that could fluctuate as well, but I felt it was best to keep it as what was originally budgeted. So that increased our revenue. I believe it ended up being about $4 million, $3.5 million for sales tax projections for the 5 years in this vision plan that was adopted. I also added the column right here for year-to-date actuals on a cash basis. So that's actually what has been spent and either given to the projects or to the vendors or what was received as revenue up until this point. And then I showed the budget remaining from that point forward. The highlighted areas, the 151, the 150, and the 85,282, those are the monies that are left over on those projects. I believe the feasibility study, which was originally budgeted for $75,000 out of the leisure pool and $75,000 out of the 50-meter pool, that consultant fee is pretty close to being paid in full. If it is paid in full, that is what is remaining. The YFS kitchen renovation is completed, and so there's approximately $85,000 that can be reverted back to the the Vision program. it shows up awfully dark on this spreadsheet, but the projection, if all the revenues come in as anticipated, all the expenditures are dispersed as budgeted, and we do not use any of the contingency funds in the bottom, it is projected to have $5.5 million left over at the end of 2015. And as I've always said to the council, I'd like to keep $1 million showing in that budget, so there's potentially $4.5 million for reallocation purposes. I would also like to point out and maybe preempt a little bit based on the article that was in the paper about the request from the soccer group and a question from Mr. Laurenti. He asked me if the council wished to allocate the $2.2 million to the soccer group now versus 2015 where the money is currently budgeted, do we have that money available? And according to the current projections, the answer is yes, we do. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Pauline? Being put your light on.
Oh, Mr. Renti. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pauline, and as a follow-up question to the one I had earlier today, to your statement on the projections, and I don't want to know where the break-even situation is, but how comfortable are we with if we were awarding it today with whatever stipulations that come out of this, if we were to award that whole amount, where would we? I guess the question I'm trying to ask you is, the projections are based on what, the 3%?
Starting in 2013, but I honestly think that the projection for 2012 that was approved is probably going to be a low projection.
Okay. Where do we get in trouble if we fall below the projection? What if we're at 2.5 or 2? Does it get really tight? I know that's just a subjective question, but
Each percentage in this fund is about $100,000 for 1%. So if it doesn't go up 3% and only goes up 1 or 2%, it'd be about $100,000 less.
okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Okay, I have a question, Pauline. So right now we do have $2.2 million available for the soccer group.
In 2012, yes.
Okay. How is this usually distributed? As they receive bills, or do we just write them a check?
If my memory serves me correctly, we usually have an agreement with the organization, and I'll use the performing arts, for instance. We had an agreement with them where the school paid all of it, and then we reimbursed them up until the dollar amount. We have to, if the city is not bidding out the project and the city is not awarding the project, it does have to be paid by the organization first. So I would venture to guess that the city attorney's office would have to put some kind of agreement together to do whatever the council wishes to do, quite honestly.
Okay. Anyone else? Pauline, we might have you come back and talk about your spreadsheet with the Horace Mann pool here in a little
That's
while.
not a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, committee. Blaze Emerson. I'm here representing kind of all these young folks and the parents. I'm here as basically a parent. I am not a part of any of the organizations. My daughter I have one daughter that does play soccer. She has played both rec soccer and for a club, and now is in the high school program. So I'm not on the board of any one of these, and so I'm here basically as a parent trying to move this complex forward. It's been about 10 years since I've been up front here, so the new technology, we were using slide projectors the last time I had to make presentations in front of the council, so great, thank you. I think everybody's very aware of the overall master plan of the soccer complex that we have up here. We're basically looking at 21 fields with basically including a championship field in that middle. Remember, this is a concept plan. There's probably going to be some changes to this as this ultimately gets developed. Soccer Rapid City. Soccer Rapid City is an overall umbrella group that represents a number of different groups. As you see, the Rapid City Youth Soccer League, Rushmore Soccer Club, West River Adult Soccer League. And there's some other kind of associations with some other organizations. You have the high schools. That includes all 3 high schools in Rapid City, Central, Stevens, St. Thomas More. They both have girls and boys teams. This year is our first year for the School of Mines is going to have a men's team, which is going to be very exciting for the community. Go back a little bit of history. 2005 is when the complex was originally allocated money for, at that time it was the Vision 2012 Fund, now the Vision Fund. That really came out of 2 pots of the Vision money, as you guys said it, from civic improvements and also economic development. That was the split that they did. It was basically $3.8 million that was awarded to for the soccer complex. In late 2009, the city soccer were getting together, said we need to get a little better plan for this. What's actually going to happen? How is this going to come together? At that time, Forefront Engineering with some other WIS Associates, Skyline Engineering, and Felsberg, Holt, and Yultig were basically brought on to basically look at a master plan for that, and that was completed in February of 2010. Out of that preliminary plan, basically they had 3 phases that they had identified. I'm not going to go into depth on those phases, but basically, see, phase 1 was around $4.5 million with a total budget of a little over $10 million. What we've done since then is taken a look and said, you know, even at that phase 1, that's going to be a little bit of a stretch right now. We've came back and been working, and what we'd like to do is come back in with a revised project phasing, which just includes the basics to get the fields and parking built at this time. So what does that mean? We're looking at a basic kind of a redesign of that master plan that I originally had you look at. And a couple of those things is to reduce costs, is to minimize circulation. There's some, a lot of circulation in that. Maximize the parking areas, try to group those together so we're not spreading those out, getting those costs down there. Also, we're looking at relocating the irrigation pond. So what do we really want to accomplish? We want to get the site graded and the fields seeded. We want to develop the parking and circulation so we have places for people to park and get in and out. And finally, develop of an irrigation well, storage, and irrigation system so we can keep those fields actually green. In a year like this, that would have been a struggle. What we're looking at and working with our engineers is that we're looking at about $4 million to get that accomplished. But that's not where we just stop. Future phases. We'd be looking at lighting of the fields, concessions and maintenance buildings, developing the on-site water and sewer utility improvements, that so we can build for like the concession stations, have restrooms, those type of things, and have that available. Off-site utility improvements, that's getting those utility improvements up to the fields from where they're at on the north side of Oakville Road. And then kind of finally some landscaping and other amenities that would be nice to have as part of the field complex. So what's our goal? To develop a basic soccer complex that meets the needs of the community with the ability to enhance that complex in the future. Fundraising has been a big issue as part of this project. And I just wanted to talk about a few things that we've came across, and I won't say me personally, but as we've been discussing this. Challenges. As we've been out talking with potential donors and people out in the community and corporations and companies, they're always unsure, when is this going to get built? When is the vision funds are going to be released? Part of that is there's no clear start date. And without the funding, it's hard to establish a start date. And there wasn't really a really good overall comprehensive fundraising plan. So what are some of our opportunities? We've seen a large support from the ISIS group, hospitality group in town. Recently, within I think it was the last 2 weeks, Rapid City Soccer has contracted with the Abbey Group, which is to help facilitate a fundraising plan with the goal of raising $2 million with that. The other opportunity to get fundraising going is you start moving dirt, then people are on board and say, hey, there's something going, we can get behind this and support this. And just other revenue options that we have looked at is, one of them is tax increment financing. I don't want to get into a lot of what the economic impact of this facility will be. What I'm using here is some numbers that the CVB put together based on what they saw in the last 2 years. And these are just yearly things. Remember, their formulas are very conservative. They're basically taking out of town participants, number of days for the tournaments, and $125 per participant is their estimated direct spending. This is from the CVB. This is low. We know this is low, but we wanted to use these numbers because we don't want to overestimate what we're selling here. In the spring, summer season, typically 3 to 4 tournaments. You're looking at 990 players, a little over almost $400,000 in direct spending out of that. Fall season, between the high school season with the tournaments that are in the fall, other tournaments, with the School of Mines coming in and bringing games in, projected over 1,200 players, $450,000 of direct spending. Other tournaments and stuff that go on, we have state tournaments that come in, other activities that are coming in through the years that aren't always directly, estimated almost another $800,000. As I said, this comes from the CVB.
One thing I want to point out is that CVB number is the 125, and we multiplied by our information.
Yes, that 125 is the CVB number is what they did, and they're using our numbers for that. So what did that come up with? Basically $1.6 million annually in direct spending. What does that mean to the city? You're looking at about $32,000 in sales tax. That's the 2%, 2 pennies going on that. How I calculated the BBB tax for that was taking half of that only half of those dollars would be eligible for that BBB tax, that third penny BBB, and that's about $800. Since that's only 1 penny, that's about $8,000 there. So that's just talking about a little bit about what potential impact this field complex could have. We see that this would be a lot larger because we could be growing a lot of these activities. What's the other impacts to the city? The one thing that the Soccer Rapid City has funded over the years is the maintenance and operation of all the fields that they have leased. So there has not been any cost to the cities for mowing, maintaining of those fields. In addition, the new complexes, I know this is a hot issue with the city. We're looking at drilling a well using groundwater for our irrigation, that we're not using potable water. This is not water that's been treated going through the system, and so you don't have to have that capacity in the system to be irrigating these fields. That is the design of this complex. What are some of the other benefits to the community? If you looked at the front page of the sports section today in the Rapid City Journal, the headlines was the Black Hills Youth Football League is growing. There's a large demand for fields out there in this community. By vacating the fields that soccer is using today, whether that's the Star of the West, Polo Fields, Omaha Street, Sioux Park, those fields, that provides opportunities for other organizations to come into those fields. And so I think there's many uses, and there's probably more than what I've listed here that have opportunities for those fields. So what is our request? Thanks to the suggestion of Mayor Sam Quaker, Soccer Rapid City is requesting the release of the remaining Vision funds allocated to the soccer complexes over the next 2 years or as funding becomes available. We believe that with the release of the funds and ongoing fundraising efforts, that phase 1 of the soccer complex can be completed without any without any alternative financing methods, such as tax increment financing. In addition, the development of the enhancements of the complex can be an ongoing project that will be manageable over time. So we'll be able to handle those other phases over time because they're smaller chunks. This is our big chunk right now. So with that, I would open up if there's any questions of me or any of the other soccer group, and hopefully we can answer those.
Are there any questions for Mr. Emerson?
Mr. Emerson, are there other people planning to talk in your presentation?
At this time, I don't believe so.
Okay, okay. And you're requesting the 2.2 million be released?
Actually, we're requesting the remaining allocation. There was about little over $120,000 that has been already spent. That was for that preliminary master plan that was developed. What we're asking for is just the release of the remaining funds, depending on how they come in. You know what I mean? We understand there's about 2.2 potentially in the bank this year that we could be moving forward, but we know the remaining funds would have to be happening in a future year from that. We're just trying to say from the that these funds are now available for the soccer, that we can start moving ahead, get the design plans done, go out to bid, and get this moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Nordstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Blaze, thank you for the presentation. You folks did a remarkable job in the time frame that you put it together. Currently, I've got about 4 questions for you. Currently, you have, on the first slide up there, it showed about 21 fields. Currently, how many fields have you got in existence now?
We have 19 fields in the city, scattered throughout the city.
Would this be in conjunction with or release of the 19 fields?
We would be, the fields would be released over time. As these fields are developed and become playable, then we would be releasing those fields out.
You've got some contracts on those, or leases,
Right.
or
We have
some
leases.
kind of a legal document?
Yes, with the city, typically with like how all the sporting organizations have with the facilities that they use. Most all of them are on city property, but they have a lease with the city.
Thank you, Blaze. The biggest question I've got here is reiterate for me, please, why the funding now versus 2015?
As you seen, this funding was originally approved in 2005. And there's been a number of different hurdles over the years and to get to this point. And I'll address a couple of those as I've been following, and I haven't been integral in all of these discussions. But if you remember, for a couple of years, we had a larger discussion after the funds were approved or allocated. Where does this complex go? There was a large discussion in front of the city council, whether does it go at the Wally Byam site, that was discussed quite in depth, or at this site here. And there was a couple other alternatives looked at over those years. I believe it was 2007 was when finally the kind of the purchase agreement or the transfer of the property from Doyle Estes, who donated this property to the city. He was trying to donate it to the soccer, but it was easier to go through the city, was not until 2007. So in 2000, didn't happen until 2007. So there was a time period in there was some flux there of even what's going on. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. You know, probably one of the more pressing reasons is the reversionary clause that's in the agreement that says in 2013 we need to be either moving ahead or we'll lose the property.
I think that's a critical factor, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That is an agreement between the city and
Mr. Estes.
Doyle Estes, thank you, yeah. So that's why an additional reason why the time crunch,
Yep.
yes, and why you need
Absolutely.
the funding now. Okay. The other larger question that I've heard from previous council members is the cooperation of the soccer groups. It seemed to be a sticking point in previous councils, and can you demonstrate the cooperation that's starting to exist now or currently underway?
Absolutely, I'd be glad to. You know, one of the things, I've been a parent of both soccer, club soccer and recreational soccer, and a coach on both sides of that organizations. And, you know, today we're, for the first time in history that I know of, at least during my 15 years of coaching, are we putting together a team or a tournament together. And, you know, there's been a big push towards combining these organizations. We're working together. We are friends. You know, I look out in the crowd and I don't see anybody that I don't like. I mean, this is life, right? It's good stuff. And so I think we are definitely coming together. And I think it's evidenced by the people who are in the crowd. We got all kinds of people that are here.
And to that point, whether we have one of the presidents of one of the organizations here, the other one could not, is actually, I think, in the airport in Minneapolis tonight. So if you want maybe to hear her,
Their name, please?
that's Cassandra
Messmer.
Messmer. Cassandra, you want to maybe say?
If I could address a question to Cassandra? We'll need you to recite your name for the record here, Cassandra.
Cassandra Messmer, President, Rapid City Youth Soccer League.
Thank you. One of the things that I've been really concerned about, and taking precedent from the previous councils, is the cooperation of the soccer leagues. It seemed a little bit of a disjointed concern that they had at that from previous councils. So can you address that point or major concern for me is the cooperation?
Absolutely. I've been a part of the board with Rapid City Youth Soccer League for 8 years, and I can truthfully say that it's been rumors for that long. I've never had a problem. I've been the president on and off for the last 3.5 years. I was president when Renee Campa was president. We went out to supper together. We had many talks, good talks. Never were there any issues. When Shane Matkins was president, same thing. We always got along now. Jason Etherton is the president. We get along great. I've talked to him on the phone a couple times today. Like they said, we're working together to do a tournament at the end of October, which in my 8 years has never happened. I don't see any rift between our organizations. We're working together. We've had merger talks over the last couple years. We're trying to push forward and trying to get rid of those, what I would say are rumors or things that are way in the past. They're not, it's just not what it is today.
Could you elaborate for me just a little bit more on the October event coming up?
Sure. At the end of October, we are going to have a tournament that we're going to do together. Normally in the past, Rushmore Soccer Club has held a tournament in September, and we've held ours in October. And we decided for the good of soccer in our community, we were going to do one together as one group. So we've been meeting. There's a couple of us that we formed committees from each of our boards to come together, and we hope to make it a even more successful tournament than we both had in the past.
Thank you, Cassandra. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And then I need to go back to Blaze or Kurt one more time. The expectation of the $2.2 million tonight with future funding coming between now and when? You're looking at what and for the future?
I think as soon as possible. Our goal is to get design plans done as fast as possible. If we could get grading started this year, that would be wonderful. We have had discussions with Doyle Estes about that reversion clause. He says if there's progress being made, he is willing to extend that clause. That's the one reason, as Kurt said, we're pushing so hard. That's why we want to get dirt moving and make that plan so we can keep on making that. Would it be a dream that my freshman daughter could play on these fields as a senior? That would be great. I don't say that might not come completely to fruition, but that's my personal goal. It would be lovely to see that, but that's really a minor point. We just want to, if we don't start now, it's always going to be another few years down the road, and I don't think it will ever come to fruition.
We have some great energy right now, and ultimately these fields take a couple years before you can actually play on them. You got to plant grass and you got to let it take root, and then there's a lot of upkeep and taking care of that in that process. So, we want to get moving and get things taken care of as best we can.
Gentlemen, I've got several other questions, but I'm going to yield the floor at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sasso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's see, a few questions. If we were to allocate these funds, just to clarify, what would you anticipate city's ongoing expense would be beyond what we would be allocating?
We're not expecting anything.
That was the answer I was looking for. So just so you know, that was good, right on the money. Let's see. Also, I guess just a question, knowing that you're looking at the well for watering the property, you know, if you've got a tournament going and you're dealing with 100-degree temperatures, what are you looking at for how are you going to handle the logistics of drinking water for that?
At this, and I can say this truthfully, going to many soccer field or locations throughout the region, majority of the soccer complexes have very limited water and facilities. We're bringing large amounts of water to the games. You know, it's not unusual to have a couple cases of water sitting in the back of your truck in the coolers, ready to go for that aspect. Parents of soccer are used to that. Even if when we finally get to the point of building the concession stands and stuff like that, when you have a large tournament like that, they get overwhelmed. You know, I mean, that's very hard. They aren't as kept up as much as from that end. From parents, you're still bringing a lot of that stuff in.
And as a for instance, Sioux Park is our only facility right now that would have drinking water, and 99% of the time I don't drink there unless I'm really thirsty.
Fair enough. Let's see. One last question. I guess the other concern that I would have would be regarding the contract and the reversion clause, and whether or not that would be something that we would be able to look at, just to make sure that if we do release funds and you do start working on those fields, that we wouldn't want any errors where it could be construed and reverted back.
I think those are great comments. I think, and then I'll look at the city attorney. I would assume he's going to want that in place before any of that happens. And so I guess I was assuming, and like I say, I'm assuming this, but that was in the back of my mind that those things would have to be taken care of before any kind of money was released, because that way those things are legally tied up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Joe Landine a question here. I think it'll clarify about this reversionary clause. It's my understanding that the city doesn't have to have a soccer field there. My understanding is they have to have some kind of recreational activity, like a dog park or a nature trail. I mean, really, it can be anything for us to take that property. Would you weigh in on that, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I believe you're correct. I haven't looked at the actual agreement in a while, but as I recall, the requirement was that the city use it for a park or recreational purposes, and the idea was that a soccer field, but I don't believe it was specific to that. But yeah, I think they're correct. If we're moving up on the reversionary clause, I think we would probably want some clarification from Mr. Estes that if we start investing money in the site, that it's with the understanding that he's not going to try to have the property revert if it's not completed in time or by the date in the agreement.
Okay. I just wanted to let my fellow council members know that I've looked into this issue, and the reversionary clause is really, it doesn't have to be for soccer, so the city can always take possession of that land, even if we want to call it a nature park or, whatever. So that's what the previous attorney said, and anyway, I've triple checked on this before, and also I know Mr. Estes just wants a park out there. So obviously he'd like to have all these fine kids out there too, but so anyway, I'll get back to the questioning, but I just wanted to let you know that I don't think I don't think the city will lose that ground there if we're willing to turn it into something else temporarily until something can be done.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, temporarily, yeah. Okay, Alderman Wright.
I don't think there's anyone up here that's not going to support a soccer field, and I don't want to be here all night hearing stuff that I'm already sold on. And I want to take the cable guy's approach, and let's get her done. I'm going to make the following motion that hopefully won't take a lot of debate. It's going to take compromise on both sides. I hope you're ready, willing, and able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to require a legal binding document between your organization and the city. That being said, and the land being secured, I'd make a motion that we release, I understand, up to $3.6 million, is that correct, for the entire project?
What is budgeted in 2015 is $3,680,500. That's
you.
the amount remaining.
Thank you. That's the year, but we'll have to work out the year in our negotiations, okay? And that within this situation, that the appropriate roads in the adjoining property be built to city standards, the water and sewer be extended to city standards, that on the field, that a restroom be constructed to support in a healthy way the activities that are out there, that an irrigation plan is developed and implemented, and that the parking and internal roads are paved. And with that, we would release the funds, and you can match it, and then here's the deal. You get the bases, the foundation built, and you add on as you can afford.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
That is what our proposal was. I'll wait for a second. I mean, I'll have a question after that,
Motion made, second. Thank you.
if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Just on the clarification of the motion, Councilman Wright, that was the extension of water and sewer to the site also was part of that motion?
Yes.
And was that also improvements to Elkvale Road of actual upgrading of the road itself?
I think the road improvements within the immediate area of the property, yes. The rest of
If
it-
we need turn lanes or stuff like that, I think that was part of the plans that were developed.
I don't expect you to build a mile of road from the interstate to there,
Okay.
but yes. I understand you're talking about a well, so, and all these details need to be handled out in a negotiation. If I may say one more thing before I yield the floor, I know you parents need to get home and get some rest because you got school tomorrow. With that, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I guess I'm in support of the motion. I've got a couple questions on the road building. Is there going to be enough funds to do that, to extend the water and sewer?
We are going to have to do additional fundraising as part for that, or look at alternative sources of funding. The $4 million will not cover all that, based on the engineer's estimate. We were looking at about, I think, water and sewer extensions were about $750,000 for water and sewer from basically the lift station on Elkvale north to the site. The concession stand building, that restroom facility, that was a hard one to peg because depending on what kind of design that is, that I don't have a direct number for that. So yeah, we're probably looking at least another $1 million to $2 to $3 million, probably more on top of that. We're probably looking at about a $7 million total project. Based on what I saw, the preliminary engineering report.
Well, and some of this, when you start talking about the bathrooms and stuff, right now, if you go to polo fields or something like that, we have no outside bathroom, or we have outside porta potties and things of that nature. When I think about...
I think you guys are missing the point of my motion.
Okay.
I think I've said that this is what I want to do, and let's get together and negotiate it. And we want the infrastructure done right. We want the facility basis and the foundation right, so we can build from there.
Okay.
I'm not in the mood for discussing down negotiating. I want to see it done right from the basis. Now, understand, the first thing that goes in there is that infrastructure, but it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to raise money to build a field on an incremental basis than it is to do some of these bigger things. The bigger things we need to get done and done right.
I guess I still have the floor.
Sorry about that, Chad.
No problem. I'm a little under the weather, but thankfully I look better than I sound. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm a soccer parent. I have a 6-year-old, and I did coach U6. So I'm speaking a little bit prejudiced here, but I do believe this is something that is absolutely necessary for our community. I ran on family, quality of life, and economic development. This fits all three of those molds quite nicely. Nice ring. I just was curious, and I guess we've already probably got a lot of support up here, but
It's donuts for the entire room.
Can you just tell me real quick, are we currently missing out on any tournaments right now because of the way our soccer system's set up, our fields?
Absolutely. I mean, when you start thinking about teams traveling from out of state and they bring more than one child to a tournament, and they can't watch their kids because the U10s are playing here and the U14s are playing there, it keeps people away. You know, our goal isn't really necessarily to bring more and more tournaments, but make the tournaments we have more successful.
Okay. And I guess the convenience of the lower cost all consolidated would be lower cost to all of you as well by consolidating these fields in one area.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then, of course, we've talked a little bit briefly, but this is something that really needs to be stressed, is by doing this, folks, we open up our fields, the current property that's being occupied by soccer, to many other groups that really are clamoring for that. And I'm telling you from the City and the Parks and Rec Board that there's a number of people looking for places to sit and play, like the youth football. You saw that in the paper today. BMX, because I'm pushing that. My son does it a lot. We've got the number of hockey players in this town's crazy, and they're all starting to play lacrosse in the off season to keep in shape. The polo group, I understand, would like to get back in the city parks, and rugby. Well, they're just guys who can't play football, but whatever. But the point of the matter is, we've got a lot of increased revenue sources, not just soccer here that we're looking at. We could bring a lot more things to the table that we're not even talking about. I mean, soccer's obviously a huge economic impact, but when you bring all those other things in, this becomes a no-brainer to me. I'm a little confused on the motion, but I'm going to support it just to get this going. I want to get this done with. I want to thank the mayor. He's not here, but this was a suggestion, and it's a great idea, so give credit where credit's due. And I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay. I'm planning to go. I'm going to ask the people that are in line to wait. Do you have a specific question for these gentlemen, or do you just want to discuss the project? Because I would like to see if there's anyone in the room that's opposed to this project so that we get from both sides. But if you have specific questions for these gentlemen, I'll go ahead and we'll continue. I know it's going to take someone brave to stand up if they're opposed, but I just want to make sure that as we're discussing that we've heard from other, both sides. So is there anyone that wants to speak in opposition of funding the Vision project for the soccer fields?
Kids. Have a seat.
We need to be down there, obviously. Okay. Mr. Laurenti?
Mr. Emerson, if you could, and I just want to make sure we're all clear, because I don't know if everybody's clear. Once we do this initial release, what's the plan? What are we wanting to do? You mentioned this year that you'd really like...
I think based on the motion, that is, we are going to be looking at probably a phase project. We're going to, from the motion, from what I heard from Mr. Wright, was he wants infrastructure in to make sure we have, in one sense, the foundation done correctly. And that infrastructure is water and sewer to the site, water, sewer on the property. Once we have that completed, I see that we have to get the fields graded, those type of things done, get those established. With that, then you can start doing your other improvements such as parking, concessions, restroom facilities and those type of things, and getting the irrigation going. That's kind of what I would look at, kind of that order of what we would be doing. Now, we would have to work very closely with the city because, like I said, as we're going to have to be aggressively fundraising, how this money is coming in, how it's being allocated, and looking at whatever other alternatives that we have to make sure that we can get some of that up there, you know what I mean? Like I say, from the, and I think a lot of that discussion is going to be on the utility side, how we can work with the city to get those utilities extended up to the site.
So the current design doesn't encompass what where we're headed now?
The master plan does.
Okay.
The master plan does. We remember when that original I had 3 phases in there? I believe that was in phase 2 of the original master plan, was the extension of water and sewer.
Okay, because I'm definitely for this project. I think this is what the Vision Funds intended, was great projects like this that are going to have a huge impact, positive impact for a large group, even just in this particular room. But I know this is just like a tiny sample of the people involved with the Youth Soccer League. So I wholeheartedly support it, and I appreciate Alderman Wright's motion, because that's what we need to do, is move forward. We'll hammer out the details and the dollars. It sounds like we're going to have enough dollars to get the ground broken and get those infrastructure items, and I think that is important. But ultimately, it's to get the ball rolling, and I appreciate your hard work. And I'm hoping my colleagues will support this project, and we can move forward and hammer out the details, that we don't get mired down tonight. We get this thing approved, and because we know we've got an agreement yet to hammer out with the Youth Soccer League. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to stick myself in here in the line. There's still more people to talk. But there's a couple of points I just want to make about the motion. And I'm the historian here on the council for 2 years. This was originally like a $10.3 million project. The city said we would give you 3.8 or 3.7, okay, and that you were to bring more money to the table. So in 2010, this came before us. You had $25,000. Now you have $50,000. So at this rate, if we, I mean, I know what Alderman Wright wants to do is to do it right. But what we're doing, we're now jumping you back again from 10.3. We're making you go up to 7. When you can only raise $12,550 a year, you're never going to get your $7 million. And so we're back to the reason why we didn't want to start this in the beginning, was because there was a bar that was set high. You knew you finally, you knew you couldn't make it. And so if we start adding, saying they have to have bathrooms and street improvements and everything with this same funding, what's going to happen is they're going to come back next year and the year after wanting more money from the city. And so I caution my fellow councilmen to not put that burden on them. Ideally, yes, that's what will eventually happen. But if it's part of getting this money, I think that's just, we're just reinventing another problem. Let's see. When you said that you needed that $4 million, this project, so that still leaves them $320,000 short. And at the ability to raise $13,000 a year, that's going to be a long time coming. Now, I realize you're, exponential increase. So did that in price include the volunteer work that you've already had promised to you, or that's in addition to all the volunteer work you've had promised?
We really have not had any official volunteer work promised at this stage. Part of this was to truly go out and look for some of those type of opportunities to maximize our costs. I mean, basically maximize our bang for our buck for the construction of this. So we have not had those specific conversations. Those are ideas that we are basically have part of this, but we have not had those costs. To speak about the fundraising, I'll let Kurt talk a little bit more on that aspect of it.
That's okay. I know you have this thing for $2 million and all, but at the same time, so does every other community group in this town. So it's.
Madam Chair, could I just address a little bit on that, please?
Okay, go ahead.
Being a person that went out and talked to several businesses and had the door opened and greeted and everybody in support of it, everyone asked me, well, why isn't the city behind this? Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to go out and talk to people and keep getting the door slammed in your face, more or less, not in a bad way. Everybody supports you. They say, gee, I like you, I want to help you, but where's the city? Mm-hmm. And, you guys were standing back there with the purse strings, and I couldn't get anything done. And I know it wasn't just me. We had a lot of other people doing the same thing. And so to put that $12,000 a year on there, I'd write a check for that. I mean, personally, if that's
Right.
what you're thinking about, and that's not the case, but I think it's
Well,
kind of an unfair statement.
What I'm saying is our precedent that we have to look at, and I'm trying to protect you guys by not having you sign on to a $7 million contract that you're not going to be able to make. Okay, you're going to be doing good to make the $4 million at where we stand now. Maybe next year you'll, have $15 million. I don't know, but so even though I might be talking bad, I'm really trying to protect you.
Thank you for that clarification.
So, anyway, I would much rather, and I do have to say one thing, I got a call that during the flood, that this area was, had a lot of water in it, rushing water. And the constituents are concerned that you start building fences, you start building buildings, essentially you're building dams in there and backflow into Rapid City. So that is something I wanted my colleagues to know about, that there was a lot of water out there during the flood. Okay, so my last comment before I turn it over to my colleagues would be that I would like to see some kind of substitute motion or something for to fund this 2.2, and let's see where they are, and then look at it again in 6 months, 9 months, or something, and see where they're at that time. Because the reality is, once we give you the 2.2, we're going to give you the rest of the money. But my concern, we say $7 million now, you're going to nickel and dime us, not you, but the process. And so I would rather go in a much more straightforward approach. I love these soccer, and I support the project. It's just that I just don't want you ending back up in the same position you've been in and have another council that then says, show us the money. The previous council was really softies. Why don't you show us the money? And so I'm trying to protect you with this. So thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just address the floodplain issue. Property is currently in the Bell or the Box Elder floodplain. It's an unstudied area. Based on the engineering's report, by the time they get done with the grading and get everything done, approximately probably 85 to 95% of the property is going to be outside of the floodplain by the time they're done. By the time we reshape the property, get things done, it will be. The other thing you have to remember is many of the fields currently are in the Rapid Creek floodplain as they are right now.
Right.
That's a good use of floodplain property.
Right. My concern wasn't the use so much. I mean, we really shouldn't be using it, but it's when you start building all sorts of buildings that can then act like dams and cause problems for other people and communities. Okay, let's see. Who has not spoken yet? Alderman Clayton.
All right. I'll use Bonnie's microphone. First of all, what I'd like to say is, as a 26-year military veteran, where the Pledge of Allegiance is very important to me, it was really a treat to hear all these young athletes join in unison and raise their voices to pledge allegiance to our flag. And I appreciate all of you being so quiet, because I know it's hard to do, and you don't have particularly good seats down there on the floor. Gentlemen, I have a very simple question for you. You mentioned 21 fields in this complex and 19 that are used in various parts of the city. And I think there was some mention made about some of them some of the 19 currently in use in the city reverting to other uses. Would the plan be that once all 21 are up, then all 19 around the city would revert to other uses?
That's a good question. And I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure that would be the case. We'd have to kind of see how everything played out. Obviously, it takes a little bit of time to get there, but as those fields became usable, as we could move there, we would be releasing those fields. I can't quite imagine us using 19 plus 21.
Or 21 plus some portion. That's kind of where I was going with my question.
The initial discussions was to release them all. I think there's always those cases where, and you never want to shut the door completely, particularly with our high school programs and some things of those type of activities where it's nice to have some practice fields closer to those facilities where those students don't have to drive, clear across town to basically get to that practice field right after school, because those practices happen right after school. That's just one situation where I could see that we may have a couple of them where they wanted to keep, retain some of that type of facility.
I'm thinking in terms of a win-win situation where as you folks grow and some of these become available to some of those other sports, it's a win for those people.
Yes.
We don't want to maintain all those fields plus the other ones.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Landine?
Thank you, Madam President. I know we don't want to negotiate this tonight, but I had a couple of questions. Do you envision the city's money cash flowing this project? Are you going to need the city's money to cash flow the project?
For the construction?
Yes.
Yes.
I will just say that it's very rare that our money is used to cash flow a project in this situation, because normally what happens is in a development situation, if there's a portion of it we're paying for, there's financing in place, the developer gets financing, and then we reimburse it after the payments are made. I'm not aware of a situation where we've spent this type of money in a situation where we just handed it over to a group with the promise that they would do something with it. Generally, we have waited until after the money's already been spent so we could verify that it met the legal requirements, the bidding, and the other requirements that we condition the money on. So that is, I'm not just saying that is an issue that's going to be difficult to work through. And I want everyone to be aware. I advocate that we probably sit down with this group and talk to them and try to work through some of these issues now. I think that's beneficial. But I want it to be clear to everybody there's some major hurdles that need to be worked through. And I don't want anybody, I would hope, coming back later and saying, well, you promised this money and now you're throwing hurdles in the way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like the council generally supports this and wants to see it proceed, but also wants to make sure that there's long-term funding in place for the maintenance and things. I will also say, talking about the infrastructure, the water and sewer is not the only infrastructure at issue. And it was somewhat brought up and then moved away from, but you have a 2-lane facility out there and there's nobody from Public Works here tonight, but I know Public Works has concerns about if this project is as successful as you hope it is, that road is not going to be sufficient to support that facility. And I don't know if you've done a traffic study yet or not, but yes. You have done a traffic study?
That was part of the preliminary engineering report.
And what does it say about the roadway?
It really depends on what type of activity ultimately happens out there. I mean, if you're looking at what we're seeing today and with the type of tournaments that you're seeing with growth in those tournaments, turning lanes and stuff like that at the facility, I think that was kind of as what Mr. Wright had as part of his motion, would be sufficient. If all of a sudden this thing grows and if you remember that master plan had that nice big complex or stadium, and all of a sudden you had, 15,000 seat stadium, place there, and you have that filled up. Now that's a different scenario for a traffic volume in that aspect. So today, I think the 2-lane road would be sufficient with turning lanes. Beyond that, and where it would grow to, that's the part that do you and this is the hard part. And I come from the planning field, so I have a pretty good feel for this. This is the balancing act. Do you build the church for Easter services, or do you build them for the general services on the Sunday? And that's that'll have to be part of the discussion.
And as long as that's understood, that the roadway, that mile of road between the interstate and to the site is going to have to be an issue of discussion, so we can do as Alderman Wright said, and make sure that when we do this, we do it right, and we don't have a traffic snarl out there when we do get big tournaments.
Okay, are you through, Mr. Landine? Okay, thank you. Mayor? Oh, okay. Has everyone on the queue already talked? Okay. Okay, Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your clarifications. And Bonnie, I appreciate the history. A couple of points. And Joel, I just want to ask you, have you got enough clarification for direction to pursue negotiations at this time?
I think that we have a good base. I don't know that there's more that you can give us tonight. I think what we really need to do as staff is sit down with these folks and start talking. And I think after we do that, other issues are going to come to light, and we may have to come back and seek further direction. But it sounds like the most important thing for everybody is to start moving the process forward as soon as possible.
Okay.
I'm
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Nordstrom.
A couple more questions, especially for, well, let me start with you, Madam President. Just to make sure that we got accused on a previous vision funding project of moving this too fast. So if we can get some clarification on making sure that this is just a recommendation body, and this is going to go where next, when?
Okay. I was wanting to ask the attorney a question about this. Joel, are you recommending that we kind of just proceed with negotiations and then come back for a decision? Or would you like us to vote on this motion or a substitute motion?
Well, ultimately, until there's a contract in place, we aren't obligated to do anything. But I think we should probably have an idea of how much money that you're willing to put on the table right now. That's what these folks seems to me need to know. And then we have a number that we can work with and sit down and look at all these issues and try to work through them so they can cash flow their project, or so we can get this constructed and we can deal with all the issues that need to be dealt with. And so I would identify perhaps the amount that you're looking at and then give direction for us to sit down and try to hammer out an agreement that we could then bring forward for approval.
Yeah, maybe we can.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I'm not hearing that in the original motion, though, correct?
Okay. Well, right. Probably a motion to bring forward so much money or set aside so much money and then I'll go for negotiations, I guess, because the attorney knows what Mr. Wright is looking at, and Mr. Wright can be on the committee.
And Mr. Wright can clarify his motion if needed, too.
That too.
Well, if I can, just a couple of points on your motion, Alderman Wright, is that I'm curious about the time frame, because you're wanting the folks to build. I'm not objecting to the intent. I'm just looking for an idea for the time frame you're looking at.
I didn't say
Everything has to be established and built correctly. But what I'm concerned about is the time frame that you're looking at for everything to be in place. Let's say, let me start with the question of...
Time for Blaze's daughter to play.
Mr. Wright, you have the floor now.
No, my motion was very simple. I think, but apparently not. There's $3.6 million that's available. That's the commitment I want us to make. I'm not specifying any exact time. I'm with the attorney. This calls for both parties, the city and the soccer groups, to come together and negotiate what we need to be doing. And it's a give and take world. And it's going to come back to us probably more than once. But bottom line, the land is secure, that we want the infrastructure secured and done right, and to include the road, water, and sewer, and that's going to take some discussion. The fields, I want to see a restroom out there so we have a healthy, safe, environmental area. Your irrigation plan will work. Parking and in-road streets need to be paved, that's the standard. And we come up with a negotiation how we do it. Now, keep in mind, folks, it's going to be a lot easier for you to raise money to seed an acre of soccer field than it is to build a mile of sewer line. I'm trying to give you that. So let's move on and let's get her done. If there are any questions, someone please ask me directly, and I'll clarify it.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm just kind of concerned about the folks having access, number one, to the funding source, and then meeting your time constraints, and then what Alderman Peterson's brought forward is the history, is that the groups that come forward on projects, they usually have some, I'm going to call it advanced funding, so that they have a major skin in the game. So that's when I meant to make sure that all those pieces are in place. Do you understand what I'm trying to say, Jerry? Is that,
Except I haven't put a time frame on it. I think that needs to be discussed, and I understand that's part of it. And I think the amount of money that we can afford is in the 2012 program. That's a 3.6. And I think we talk about how we want to get her done.
Okay.
thank you, Madam. Thank you,
And in
Madam Chair.
time,
I'll-
get in time, get it done in time so Blaze's daughter can play.
And just one more.
one of the field's done,
One more thought to leave Alderman Lewis with is rugby is football without pads, so.
Okay, Alderwoman Scott.
Call the question.
Does anyone object to calling the question? I do. Okay, let's take a roll call on whether to call the question. Or should I call? All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Those against calling the question? Me. Roll call now.
Lewis. This is on the vote to call the question, correct? Okay, call the question. Oh, it was no. Roberts? Yes. Wright?
Yes.
Lorente? Aye. Sasso? No. Nordstrom? Scott? Clayton? No. Peterson?
No.
5-4, motion fails. Excuse me, 4-5. Backwards.
So the motion passed?
Motion fails.
Okay.
4-5.
Okay. Let's see, Mr. Wright.
I'm done.
Okay. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, like I said before, I want to get this done. I don't like Larry the Cable Guy much, so just lost some votes. Anyway, I'm worried about. I appreciate Alderwoman Peterson's comments about hamstringing you guys again. You know, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this, but hopefully this can be hammered out in negotiations. Do you feel like you can move forward with this motion? That'd be a fair question. I don't want to put you on the spot, but-
We're in a better place than we were previously.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure. My intent is obviously just to get this finished, and I understand that that's probably Alderman Wright's intention as well. But I just think that I don't want to set you up to fail again. My biggest concern.
I really don't believe that you're setting us up for failure. I think, ultimately when you guys support us, they will come. People will stand behind us. I have had very, very little feedback that was negative, other than when's the city going to release the money?
Right.
So that's my belief. I've been in front of these people. I think we can get it done. We've hired a funding group to help us in the last 2 weeks. We're building that committee, and it's going to move on.
All right. Well, I guess I'll give my reluctant support to the motion just because I want to keep it going forward. I don't want to kill anything, but I do have my concerns about doing that to you. So hopefully it works out. Thanks.
Ms. Sumption?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to offer maybe a suggestion. And I agree with Mr. Landine that it sounds like the majority of you, if not all of you, are in favor of moving this project forward. My recommendation, quite honestly, would be to go ahead and move the $2.2 million forward to 2012. That is honestly all that we can budget additionally in what is currently on the spreadsheet. We can't take the whole $3.6 million. So if you move the $2.2 million forward to 2012 as budgeted funding, and then authorize staff to start working with them to work out the details, because according to our current ordinance, we have to have a developer agreement of some type in place for this project that will solidify what is wanted from the council, what is expected of them from their project. We can address how the money is to be handled in that, but at least it gets us off of the center point, which I feel like that's where we're at right now. So that would be my recommendation.
Can I get a motion?
Let me clarify. Part of the negotiation is
Mr. Wright,
that scheduled release.
Mr. Wright,
Yes,
did you want to speak?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead,
I have
go
no
ahead,
problem.
Mr. Wright.
I have no problem with it in the negotiation that the scheduled payment is part of that. I think it's totally appropriate, and that was the intended part of my motion. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Everyone has spoken, right? Okay, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Kurt, and thanks, Blaze, for bringing this forward. I think it's about time we do something. And I really think that Jerry came up with a wonderful idea. Because if we have a strong base underneath that, this is going to be the complex of western South Dakota, if not the upper Midwest. If we get this built, we start it on the right foundation, I don't think you guys are going to have any problem getting funding for it. I think people are going to come forward, they're going to want to donate to it, and they're going to want to see this project succeed. So I think Jerry brought forward a great idea. I think if we're going to do it, we might as well do it right. And good luck with you guys, and you have our support up here. Thank you.
Mr. Sasso.
I would like to make a substitute motion, and basically, so that I don't reiterate everything and make mistakes, but I believe we'd be looking at the substitute motion of authorizing $2.2 million, having city staff begin negotiating and exploring options. And if I can get a second.
Okay. Who seconded down there? Right? Oh, Steve Laurenti.
And if I may,
Yes,
Madam
please,
Chair.
Mr.
Thank you.
Sasso.
Again, I think everybody supports the project. I think with what was originally brought before us with a $4 million price tag was reasonable. I think the concern that we have, and there again, I understand what we want to do. We want to have everything in place, but the price tag just jumped from $4 million to $7 million, and even if fundraising does accelerate about twice the speed at $25,000 a year to get from that $4 million to $7 million, it would probably be 120 years. So I'm thinking we might want to slow this down a little bit and explore a little more. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Scott.
Call the question.
Okay. Sasso seconded. Is there any objection to calling the question? Okay. Could we have a clarification of well, right now we're just talking about calling the question, which is, Charlene, do you have the motion?
Okay. What's on the floor right now is the motion to call the question.
Correct.
We want a clarification of the motion that will hit the floor after we
Correct.
pass calling the
Thank
question.
you. Yes, sure.
It would be the substitute motion to move the $2.2 million to the 2012 funding year and to authorize staff to begin negotiations with the soccer organization.
Is that your motion, Mr. Sasso?
It sounds awfully familiar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So is there any objection to calling the question? Okay. Let's have a vote on calling the question. All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Roll call, please.
Roberts. Wright. Laurenti. Sasso. Nordstrom. Scott. Clayton. Peterson.
Aye.
Lewis. Motion carries 8-1.
Okay, so now we're at the question of,
They'll vote on that now.
basically it's providing the $2.2 million in 2012 and then directing staff to negotiate with the soccer group to come up with a larger plan or some plan. Any questions about the motion?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
I assume that this motion carries the stipulation that the funding will provide for the funding of the infrastructure, the road, water, and sewer to city specifications, and that the field will include accepted restrooms, the irrigation program, that all interior roads and parkways will be paved, correct?
No, Mr. Wright. Right now, this is negotiating. Because you're looking at a lot more than what they're even asking for right now. So, anyway, any other questions before we vote on the motion?
Oh, I'm not done yet then.
I was going to say, I know I didn't say all that in my motion, so.
Okay. Mr. Wright.
Can I maybe say something before?
Please, Mr.
Wright?
Landine.
I think we want to get as much as we can get, but Mr. Wright, rather than getting a lot of details tonight and things that are going to tie our hands, I would ask that you rely on staff to perhaps sit down and we'll look at that. I mean, obviously, I brought up the roadway issue. We're not going to just forget that when we sit down and start talking about how we proceed. I envision that on the staff side, the planning and public works departments will be involved and give us the flexibility we need to negotiate something that's going to work for everyone, that we can bring forward and we can support. And then if it does not meet your approval when we bring it forward, you can express it when you see it, and we can go from there and either modify it or you can vote her down.
Well, I'm
Okay.
going to say that I totally trust staff. I just want staff to know that council supported these actions in getting this done. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Laurenti?
I honestly don't even know if I need to speak, but I feel like
so
I need to.
should-
I feel like I need to because I just want my colleagues to remember I hate to repeat what other people have said, and especially myself, but I don't think anybody heard what I said when I initially spoke, which is let's not get mired down. But as you can see, we like to deliberate on this, council, and we have another meeting Tuesday night next week. For your listening enjoyment, please come back.
Point of order?
That's a joke, but the bottom line is my colleagues need to remember that this agreement's going to get hammered
Point
out,
of
as
order.
the city attorney has said.
Excuse
so.
me, there's a point of order called.
Thank you.
Sorry, Steve.
Okay.
Question was called.
I think we have heard enough on this. It's not really going to change our vote any. And remember that this vote, even though we consist of the council, we are serving only as a recommending body. So it will be voted on again, Pauline, on Tuesday? Okay, legal and finance.
When is that?
But I don't think you need to bring the kids, probably in 2 weeks. So, okay, let's go ahead and vote and get this over with. We have a group needing $9 million coming in after this that we don't have. What about? No, the motion is the 2.2 for now, and then enter into negotiations, which Mr. Wright can certainly be included in that on a committee. Okay. All in favor of the motion to release the 2.2 and enter into negotiations, say aye. Aye. Those that oppose, say nay, or aye also. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. And let's take a 5-minute break to let these families find their children and leave the premises.
Justin.
Is that louder? Bill, will you see if they're in the caucus room or? Okay, I got a heads up that they're coming. Okay, I thought we might have to call Chief Allender to round up the council. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a Horseman Park Pool Replacement Feasibility Study. I had sent y'all earlier today, or right before the meeting, and I told y'all to open it up. There's a Horseman spreadsheet. But also, Lon, are you planning to present or have Jean present first? Let us know if anything's, or are you just here for questions? Here for questions. Okay. Okay, I sent you an email also earlier today to let you know that we're, as you know, this project is underfunded, and Pauline has said she has found potential for more money, but also I believe that the designer is looking at ways to streamline to make both projects more economical, and so we thought we were going to have that information. Anyway, there was a misunderstanding, and so we don't have really the information that we need. So I don't know if you want to discuss anything tonight, or if you have any questions tonight that we can discuss. So I'm looking for guidance from my council members. Okay. Let me open up. Let's see. Mr. Nordstrom, all right.
Bonnie, I realize that at the lateness we got your email, but would you kind of clarify what's in that email? And then you mentioned something about Pauline and some suggestions, so I'd be interested in entertain her comments.
Okay, well, basically I was saying that when we scheduled this meeting a month ago, we thought we would have this information that we needed to make a decision tonight. But there was a misunderstanding, and so we don't have the information that we thought we would have at this point. So if you look at this little shortened Horseman spreadsheet that I sent you, it shows, oh sure, Pauline, maybe we'll let Pauline that knows what she's doing present it.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just because I was in a couple of other meetings this afternoon, I haven't had an opportunity to really vet your email, so that's why I need the help on it.
No.
Yep. Thank you.
It didn't come in till just minutes before the council meeting.
And I was in another meeting, so thank you.
That's fine. I can figure this out. Does anyone have any comments or questions while we're trying to get our technology working? Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, I'm sorry. I'm just curious, do you think maybe we should just put this off for like 30 days and wait for Gene to come back with his task that we put him to look forward or to look at? How long, can I ask you a question, Gene, real quick?
Gene Pennell.
Thanks, Gene. The things that we asked you to look at last Monday, how long do you think before you will have some good idea of
Well, let me kind of explain what I was asked to do first.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
As we met, one thing I reiterated is that as you look at this feasibility study, there's some opinions of probable cost in there. And as I stated when I presented that study, those opinions of probable cost are based on the concept designs, which are really a, kind of a rudimentary level of concept. So if I tell you I can sell you the car for $30,000, I can probably sell it to you for $29,000. I mean, that's where I'm going with that. So what was asked of me was to talk with the estimator who we use, which was Associated Pool out of North Dakota. They're a pool contractor. They did the swim center pools, to come back with some ideas about what they might look at, what they could do that would be fairly close in amenities to that, and get some idea of what kind of cost they might think that might be, to see if we can come up with some reductions. Because we haven't designed these pools. They're literally concept. So that's what I'm trying to do. Doug Yeager was out of town, so I wasn't able to talk to him yet this week. He's supposed to be back on Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Gene. I appreciate that. I'm just kind of hoping that maybe somebody on the committee here will just recommend that we take this 30 days out and look at it again when we have those numbers back. I think it'd be very important.
Right. I will just say that I can certainly support that, but I would like, though, first that we give the people that came to speak on this issue an opportunity. Does anyone want to say anything about the Horseman pool, Roosevelt Park, potential Roosevelt Park pool, the tank pools while you're here? I don't want you to have come here and waited all night and then not be heard. And my council members need to remember this so she doesn't have to come back in 30 days.
But I will. My name is Jan Osheim. I have been a supporter and a swimmer at Horseman Pool for just about 30 years now, and have actively been a champion and a supporter of that pool for probably 20 years. I support the concept pools, the water park. For the kids, they serve a purpose, but I really don't want it to be at the expense of losing a 50-meter pool. It's the only 50-meter pool we have in western South Dakota. It does bring income to the city. I don't have facts and figures and spreadsheets like the last folks do. Sam Quaker, you came and welcomed the state swim meet this last summer. Thank you for doing that. You were able to see that it does bring people to the area. They'll stay in our hotels, they'll eat in our restaurants, they'll shop in our shops, and it's just a 50-meter pool. Over the course of this last summer in particular, swimming laps up there, we're seeing more and more adults that are coming there because it is the only outdoor pool in the city that can truly accommodate adults now. It's not overflowing with the kids, that there just isn't room for the adults. It serves a purpose for the adults, and I've had so many of them come forward to me just this summer and say, but where else can I go as an adult and get my exercise and swim if I can't come here? I know that there's lots of decisions and there's lots of mechanics that need to be worked out, but I really encourage the board to don't eliminate the adult access pool completely. Don't eliminate the 50-meter pool completely. Us adults too need exercise, and we need a place to be able to go and do it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to talk?
I never miss a chance. My name's Dan Rasby. I live at 1615 Palo Verde. I too swim laps at Horseman. But my thought on a good reason to keep the 50-meter pool, there's been on several occasions when I have met people that have come to the pool that have, by accident, that were at other events. The last one was they were at some sort of horseshoe, and they're just amazed that our city has such a facility. And I'm going to compare it to a recent experience I had in Gillette. I went with my kiddos for a soccer tournament, and we had some time to kill. So by chance, I went to their library, and it was just fantastic. They had a children's library, as big as this room, and a sunken reading area, and technology all over, and an adult reading room with a fireplace and some couches and things like that. And also Gillette is littered with outdoor sculpture. And I think when someone comes to our town, obviously, it's a lot about the arts. There's Mount Rushmore, there's Crazy Horse. But they do one does go out from those places, and it's these little finds that you really take home with you. I left a note, with the library board, and certainly told the people of Gillette, that their attention to things like this was appreciated. And I think that business leaders, when they come to town, look at things like that. I mean, I certainly would be impressed if one of the things you showed me, who knows, maybe the guy was a swimmer, but someone, you had a 50-meter outdoor pool in that setting. So it's hard to measure economic impact of anything. I mean, you can come up with real numbers if there's a swim meet, if there's something like that. But small things like a park that's well done, a pool like that make a difference not only to the quality of life of all of our citizens, but impress other visitors and I think add to their experience of why to come back to Rapid City.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rasby. Anyone else want to talk?
I began swimming 7 years ago.
Could you state your name for the...
Corey Tomovic.
Thank you.
And now, whenever I travel, I look for pools. And I have begun to notice that Rapid City should really be called Swim City. If you go over to Roosevelt Swim Center, you will see the Masters about 11 o'clock every day. These are adult fitness crazy people. They are very fit. And if Rapid City should be known for anything, adult fitness in this country where we are fighting obesity issues and diabetes, and Rapid City is making a statement about adult fitness. And so Horace Mann is also a gem. It is a jewel. It is almost it's an experience when you go there because the sun is setting and you're swimming in the evening and there's all these adult fitness people. And I just think that we can't lose it. We can't lose that 50-meter pool. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Pauline, did you want to, Mayor, did you want to weigh in, or who wants to talk?
I was just going to bring this up.
Okay.
The mayor asked me a question as to how much is allocated right now to the to both pools and also the field house. And as you can see, it's the $7.9 million total for all 3 of those projects.
Can you close your little boxes, drop down there, so...
Try. There. As you can see, some of that has been spent, and those have been for the feasibility studies, and so $7,750,000 remains for those 3 projects currently.
So basically, E is what we have available to pay for A, column A. Is that
correct?
Okay.
And column A, if you wanted to do all 3 projects, would actually be over $20 million, the way I read the spreadsheet.
Okay. And we have about 7.75 million.
Correct.
So we are short.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Right.
If you remember at the beginning of this meeting, I pointed out that with the new revenue projections, we were showing about $5.5 million in cash left at the end of 2015 if all of our projections came in accurately and we did not use any of the contingency money that's been built into this budget. And I'd like to keep $1 million in that line for things that happen to come up, whether it's a project specifically if there's a project that comes in over what we estimated it to be. And so there's additional $4.5 million there that could also be allocated based on those projections.
Okay. Mayor, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, Bonnie. I'd like to also add that there was some preliminary discussions just recently with Council Vice President Charity Doyle and Gene Fennell and our designer, and also Doug Lowe with Tim Henderson, the Vice President of the School of Mines, regarding a potential partnership on a 50-meter pool. Partnerships are very common between municipalities and universities, as we've seen very successfully up the road with the Donald Young Center and Spearfish, and so that is something that is being discussed. We really do have two options to consider. One is to release the $4.5 million, which basically spends down all of the rest of the remaining round division funds to get this done. And I still don't think would we have enough if we did that?
No, that would only bring us,
If we took out the field house.
we took out the field house, it's 3.7. So that brings it down to about 15 million for the two pools.
So, we would have the 4.5 available, but we would still need to look at other funding sources. So my suggestion is that you allow the discussions to proceed in earnest with the School of Mines, and that we have another meeting, I would say, within the next 30 to 45 days, and by then we'll have additional funding options. I think that we could probably scrape the funding together now by spending that $4.5 million out of the Vision Fund, plus taking some money out of another fund like the SAB 28, maybe a small amount out of unencumbered cash. But that's somewhat of a cobbled together solution. It'd probably be better to see if we can take the time and work out a partnership, if possible, because it appears, based on the preliminary discussions with the School of Mines, that the time would really be ripe for that, and there appears to be interest in doing so, and so that would be my recommendation. And I want it to be on the record, because I've been on the record in the past on this, and I want to make sure everyone understands where I'm coming from. I believe strongly that Horace Mann needs a pool, a family pool, and that we also need a 50-meter pool, indoor or outdoor, down at Roosevelt Park. And I do not think that it is right, and I don't believe it's being proposed, but I do not believe it would be proper to proceed with a 50-meter pool construction down at Roosevelt without addressing the issues at Horace Mann. Horace Mann needs a pool first or at the same time. We want to keep the swim meets going, so it appears the same time as the option that I'm hearing as a consensus amongst the 10 of you and myself.
Okay, can I get a motion from someone for us to maybe look at this in 60 days? Maybe that would give it a little bit more time to talk with School of Mines and not, or you think 45?
I would prefer 30, because I think we'll know a little bit more in 30, and if we need more time, we'll ask for more time. But I want people to know that we are aggressively moving forward on this, and so I prefer 30, and if we don't have our ducks in a row, then we can come back.
Okay, Mr. Fennell, is 30 days going to be adequate for you?
I believe what the mayor said makes good sense. My conversation with Tim Henderson reflected that the timing is right. They're working through their rec center ideas, and they're doing selections. So I think it makes sense, and just like he said, if things haven't developed far enough, I think you guys can make that commitment. So.
Okay. Does anyone want to offer a motion? Mr. Wright?
Before I make a motion, I want to clarify or make a suggestion. And that was today we were meeting with Parks and Rec people Richie and I were, and an email came across from via Ron, I think, about looking at adding on to the 25-yard, or excuse me, yeah, 25-yard, it's 25-yard pool, indoor pool at the Aquatic Center, modifying that where instead of running it, adding to the south side of that and make it a 50-meter pool by knocking out the south wall. That sounds drastic. But building an indoor pool out of the 25-yard pool, we're going to stay on the same site. We're going to have to add a structure or partial structure. Pumps are there. We can use basically the same staff, minimal imprint upon the building area. And I think that option needs some very serious consideration, because then we would have an indoor 50-meter pool at the same aquatic center that we have today. I think we'd see some significant savings in operations over building a separate indoor facility.
Okay, Mr. Roberts, do you have a motion for us?
Well, I'm just wondering, is that going to be something that Mr. Pennell's going to look at?
I'm going to ask him. I'll ask him.
Were you listening? Oh. Let me start
Mr.
over.
Sasso,
wanna
do you
add-
have something to just bring to light?
I just want to say thank you, Jerry. I thought it was a great idea, too, until I talked to Mr. Fennell, who had spoken to an engineer about structural issues, and I think he'll probably be able to address those a little better.
Oh, is this the idea of...
That great idea that just won't fly.
It was, the idea that was presented to me would be to turn the existing 25-yard pool into a 50-meter pool by effectively blowing out the side of the building and then building a structure over that and building a pool. And the way I looked at that when I heard that was try to attach half of a tank to half of a tank, which would tell me that you would end up with what you've got at Horace Mann. A leaking tank.
No, that's not necessarily true.
But the other option,
Mr. Wright.
the other option that was just discussed here this evening was take the whole 25-yard pool out and build a new pool, 50-meter pool that would extend out the side of the building to the south. Some issues therein. Number one, the pool is supported with driven pile. And the reason for the driven pile is because when we were building the ice arena, we found subgrade water, and we infilled that area with large cobble, which would not support drilling through that. You would have to drive pile through it. Driving pile within a structure, a little bit problematic, number one. Number two is you would have to go inside that building and restructure the pile to pick up the rest of that pool, and you would also have to restructure the building to open it up that far, which would be quite an engineering feat. Possible. Anything's possible with the right amount of money. I think we would be adding a lot of cost to the project that I don't know that we'd get the benefit. I mean, we could do a real investigation, but this was a 30-minute snap decision this afternoon. Got my structural engineer on the phone, and he lined out all of the issues that he saw. So.
Okay. Mr. Roberts, are you bringing that motion forward?
No, not yet. I do have
Okay.
a few things that I want to.
Because I know you were eager to maybe talk about this in a month.
The mayor did ask me if I could present a couple numbers in a manner that maybe you could all write them down and add them up, if you could. Okay. The selected by the community option of option A for Horace Mann, the leisure pool with the lap pool components, et cetera, our opinion of probable cost is right at $4 million, 3.956, I believe. So if you just write down $4 million, that would be helpful. And then when we go to 50-meter, if it's done outdoor at Roosevelt Park, our opinion of probable cost for that was $4.6 million. The field house with the outdoor was $4.2 7.25. I believe you saw in the numbers that were presented earlier that it showed that we have 7.9 if you combine the pool budgets with the field house budgets. Is that correct?
7.75.
Okay. Minus me, right? You got a bargain. Let's see. Then we have the field house. Actually, let's talk about indoor pool. Our opinion of probable cost was right at $9 million. So if you had the indoor pool, that includes the enclosure of that pool, and you have the outdoor at Horace Mann, I believe you're coming up at about 13.6. Did I get that number right? Oh, I'm sorry. 12.6. Excuse me. I'll back up again. We'll just say it's in. I'm reading several numbers here. It'll be right at 13 million. Pardon? That is not inclusive of site work. When we talked, we had some site work numbers, but that was just for the footprint of the enclosure of that area.
Mm-hmm.
Each site would have some additional site work to adapt the existing parking. At Horace Mann, it's pretty much a redo because we don't have much in the way of handicap parking in that site because of the slopes and everything. Plus, the surface is pretty well shot. It's past its useful life. At Roosevelt Park, that would not be a real huge number, but there would be some cost there. A little more site work cost if it was outdoor versus indoor, because if it was outdoor, we would want to have a bathhouse component, restroom component, et cetera, that went with it, the infrastructure stuff. And we would probably need to increase that anyway if we did an indoor pool there. We would, but we picked up that in the footprint design. So that's, this indoor number is inclusive of locker rooms, restrooms, et cetera.
Mr. Roberts, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much. Pauline, hate to bother you, but could you bring your numbers back up there so everybody can see them, please? I know you wanted to go back up there. And thank you, Gene.
We need to link this.
We do. It would make it easier.
Now presenting our ever faithful, ever talented Pauline Sumption.
Again.
Here are the numbers I have, but I did include the site work
I
in
know,
those numbers.
That's what I was going to ask Gene. This is with the site work in here. The one option that we really haven't talked about right now is option A at Horace Mann Pool, which is just over $5 million, and then the outdoor pool at Roosevelt, which is $5.1 million. And if you add both of those together, you're looking at $10.1 million. So we would only have to take about $2.4 million out of the Vision Fund to do both of those projects. Plus, we've also put Gene to task looking to cut some cost on both of these, and there's a possibility we could come in maybe only $1 million over, or a little over $1 million over. So I just wanted to get this on the record that this is another option. You know, the only option we've been talking about so far tonight is the indoor pool at Roosevelt. And I think the indoor pool at Roosevelt's a wonderful idea. I wish we had the money to do it right at this moment, but I don't see that we really have the money to do it right at this moment. Don't jump up, Pauline. I don't think you found another $5 million.
I'm just trying to get rid of this.
But anyway, there is more than one option on the table here. I sure would hate to see, and this is what some of my constituents have brought to me, if we start a $9 million indoor pool down at Roosevelt before Horace Mann, we're going to get stuck with no pool again for the next 20 years. So North Rapid needs that pool. We've got a lot of young people in that area that need to have a pool up there for something to do. We need to keep them off the streets in the summertime. We need to do this for our community up there. It's something that they've needed for years and years and years and years. And it would be wonderful to have the 50-meter pool up there again, but with the option of putting it down at Roosevelt, which I think we can do. And I know using this option, we have the money to do it right now. We've been told by our finance officer there's plenty of money to do it, plus we're asking Gene. But I don't see why this option isn't really being discussed up here on the dais. The only thing people are thinking about is the indoor pool. Or at least that's what I'm getting off of the discussion tonight. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Richie Nordstrom. We still don't have a motion.
And I'm not going to get one yet either, because I've got several questions for clarification. John, Alderman Roberts, one of the reasons why I'm supporting the and moving on is because I support the option A idea, so that's why I haven't talked about it a whole lot. What I'm interested in is the indoor or / outdoor pool. But I've got several questions on that. If we start eliminating the field house, my largest concern is the recovery rate that we're going to get off of that. If I have Doug Lowe here or Lon, could you address something that we talked about earlier today, is on the recovery rate? And I'll try to be a little more specific on the question. One of the suggestions or proposals that we're looking at for the 50-meter pool now, and again, I'm okay with the option A. So moving beyond that, going to the 50-meter pool, is that without just the 50-meter pool, we're going to have a recovery rate of what %? About?
Make a motion to do that. I'll second it.
Well, the percentages that are up there with the recovery rate are combined with the field house. If you take the field house, which was done by our feasibility study that Gene performed, and the people hired that was with Gene, and if you take the field house out, you're going to be looking at least, and you're doing just a 50-meter pool without anything else, you're probably going to be looking at about a 30% recovery rate on the 50-meter pool.
Thank you, Doug. I think that's critical. And again, moving beyond option A, because I think we need to proceed with that. But the other part of it, we've been starting the conversation about a partnership with the School of Mines. Maybe the mayor can address this question for me, is that on the partnership, where would that facility be located at?
I'm not sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Because part of the discussion is that what I'm getting now is that potentially the money that could be in partnership with the field house, with the 50-meter pool and the School of Mines, the facility could be moved off-site to the School of Mines. And that'd be a concern of mine, releasing the funding to go to the School of Mines without very little control on our side. The next question I have is for Gene Fennell, if he's still available. Gene? The question I have for you is that you're concerned about the structure for if we move the wall out and there would be pilings and everything else, and I agree with you of joining the two as a binding right there. I'm not in favor of that idea either. But if we took the whole pool out and put it in, you're talking about caissons or pilings to go into that new location. Well, my question is then, isn't that not true with the proposed facility, either if it goes on the west side or on the south side?
That is absolutely true. However, you wouldn't be driving pile inside the building.
Inside the building. I understand. I understand. Okay. I guess Gene, just, and I don't know if I have the support for this yet, but I would still like to look at, or have somebody of an expert level such as yours to take a look at this moving out the south wall or opening up that south wall. And I don't know structure and all that stuff, but I was thinking if we had a foundation built out 25 yards, 25 meters, or whatever the number is, to go out there and then establish that structure on the south side of the building. That way we would have a 50-meter indoor pool at the same time.
Well, my structural engineer does have the design drawings for the original pool. It would take a little bit of thought, a little bit of study, kind of a drawn concept. Take a little thinking. I mean, that's what we do, though.
Yep, I can understand your concern about the pilings having to be inside the building. That I really do appreciate that, because that was one of the considerations that hasn't been taken into put on a question part of it. I can't think of any other questions at this point, but I'm sure there'll be others. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. I want to remind my colleagues that we still have budget hearings, and I don't know why we can't talk about all of this in 30 days when we meet again. Mr. Laurenti.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to approve Concept A for the Horace Mann Pool. If I can have a second.
I second.
We have a motion to approve a concept for the Horace Mann Pool. Mr. Laurenti, are you saying that we need to set aside the $56,100?
That's correct.
Okay. So that is the motion. So either have a substitute motion or be prepared to discuss only the motion. Oh, did you want to continue talking, Mr. Laurenti? Okay. Alderwoman Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam President. I'd like to make a substitute motion. I'd like to make a motion that we reset another Vision Fund meeting in 28 days. So it's back on a Thursday instead of 30 days, which would be on a Saturday. And I'd like to allow the options to be discovered or to be vetted out here for funding all of the options, including the extension of the current 25-meter lap pool, as well as the indoor pool option, as well as a partnership with either the School of Mines and Technology or with Western Dakota Tech. We had set this meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. I need a second, don't I? Yes. Thank you. We had set this meeting because we thought we were going to have this information. So these are really good questions, but I think we need to allow staff to go ahead and gather the information that I think this council had expected tonight. So my motion is to let's move this out another 28 days and let's see if we can get some viable information. I am in Ward 4. I do agree that we need the family pool. I agree with the mayor. I agree with Mr. Roberts. But I also do recognize that the economic impact of a 50-meter pool, being the only one on the western side of the state, is something we should consider. I'm also of the opinion that we need to do things right the first time. So if we can get an indoor pool based on funding through a joint partnership, or if we can find the funds available, we need to consider that. And then we need to get these projects going. Thank you.
Okay, we have a substitute motion on the floor, so if you could please limit your comments to the substitute motion, and that is to come back in 28 days and explore our options. Ms. Sumption.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to point out or maybe ask for a contingent upon added to that motion that this room is available that evening. Oh, we will have to check with Buildings and Grounds.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Ms. Scott? Okay, so we're flexible there. Okay, Ruth Seconder. Thank you. Okay, please keep your comments just to the substitute motion. Thank you. Mr. Wright, I'm sorry. Oh, are you?
Well, I need some clarification. I believe that all of the discussion is relevant to the 50-meter pool, and that's the concerns, correct? We were concerned about,
Ms. Scott, you want to answer?
I mean, the horseman pool, we're looking at option A, the neighborhood pool. That's
Correct.
that we're going to do that. The only question is, are we going to build a 50-meter pool or not? Is that the issue?
I do not believe so. From what I'm hearing from council tonight is that there was also the option of taking a look at the existing 25-meter laps or pool that's currently in existence and possibly looking at enlarging those to 50 meters in order to have an indoor facility.
But that's done at the Aquatic Center, correct?
Right.
But
Mr. Wright, I think what's at issue here is we've asked Mr. Fennell to come back and look at both pools and see where he can find efficiencies, some savings. So that's why I'm not willing to commit the money yet until we see the whole picture, all of our options. We are going to commit to a Horace Mann leisure pool. I know I certainly am. I just think we need to wait until we have all the pictures, all the situations.
Okay, then I still have the floor. So
You
I'll
sure
ask the
do.
question, if we're going to do that, why are we waiting? The question is whether we're going to build a 50-meter pool, indoor, outdoor, add on to a current pool or whatever. That's a separate issue. If we're going to build the Aquatic Center, the option A at Horace Mann, why are we delaying that? It's not part of that 50-meter discussion, is it? Or am I in the wrong place?
The way I view this is that I would like to consider both of them because there may actually be cost savings, as was pointed out in our discussion when we were talking about this on Monday, that there may be cost savings involved in order to let out the bid concerning both pools at the same time, rather than trying to build one pool with this and then try to do another one. We may actually be able to save the city money if we bid out both pools and get one company or one construction team to construct both pools. That's why I'm willing to wait, because again, I'm thinking of the taxpayers and I'm trying to get the biggest bang for our buck. Also, just to clarify that too, the other reason I'm willing to wait is that currently, I could be wrong, but I believe that the schedule for the field house, Horace Mann pool, and the 50-meter pool actually has the field house forecasted to be built first in 2013 and Horace Mann pool not to be built until 2014. So I'd like to have all the information because in all honesty, I don't want to wait until 2014. I'd like to see if we can move what we're going to actually recommend be constructed. Let's get it going. As you said earlier, get her done.
Then, okay, again, for clarification, pertinent to the issue and motion, is that if the desire is to get option A built at Horace Mann, let's get her done. Let's do it. Let's approve it. Let's put it in motion so it can be designed and put out. I'm not sure that putting them together is necessarily a huge savings. It's a gamble. It's a risk. May or may not pay. I think our decision tonight as to whether we're going to support that project or not. I support it. I think we should move, go with it. And the other issue, the 50-meter pool, consider it a separate issue and handle it that way.
Mr. Wright, would you be happy with us just to vote in our intention to support the Horace Mann pool? I think we all support it. We're probably half or more of the council thinks we should wait till we have all the numbers in front of us and then make a decision.
Since the question has been asked to me, I think that we as a council should make a decision. And our decision is to fund the Horace Mann option A. That's what I'd like to see done. And the rest of it we can handle as a separate issue or separate motion.
Mayor?
Thank you, Bonnie. Based on what I'm hearing in the past discussions, option A makes absolute sense, and I don't think that there really is any other option other than option A, which is to do the family pool and the leisure lanes up at Horace Mann. So I think in terms of the cost savings comes, in my understanding, with the bidding. So I think we can proceed with releasing the funds or recommending the releasing of the funds tonight for option A at Horace Mann and allow us to continue to work on the options relating to the 50-meter pool, which basically I'm hearing there's several options. There's an option to do an outdoor 50-meter pool. There's an option to an indoor 50-meter pool, and then there's an option to do something with the school mines. The field house we don't have enough money for, and that would have to be backburnered at this time. But that would be another option that would be discussed. But I would encourage the council to proceed with the motion on option A, and we will make sure we have a great presentation for you in 28 days that lays out all of the options for the 50-meter pool, and hopefully by then we'll have more information from the school mines.
Thank you, Mayor. Pauline, do we have money to release this in 2012, or would it be not needed till 2013?
Currently, the field house has about $1.5 million allocated for it in 2013, and the remaining approximately $1.9 million allocated in 2014. The 50-meter pool, I'll just pop this up here quick. The 50-meter pool shows $2,125,000 in 2014, and the leisure pool is the $2,225,000 in 2015. With the action taken earlier with moving up some soccer money, the earliest anything would be available is 2013, and then you would have to either take the field house money or shift the field house further out in the schedule.
Okay, so we don't have enough money to cover option A until 2013.
Well, that wouldn't cover it, but you could probably start the process in 2013, and we'd have to rearrange the other pools.
Okay. I just think myself, and I know I'm talking out of order here, but that we need to look at all three pools and decide as a package, because one of my concerns is we don't have the money really to speed it up. I mean, we can pull it up to next year, so we don't have to make the decision tonight. And is that we take all the money and give it to one pool, then other council members will then say, oh, there's such a shortage of money, we can't do the other pool. So I think we need to bring all three of whatever we're going to do all together in one package, and everybody will know what's being done. So anyway, that would be my recommendation. I'll try not to talk anymore. Mr. Ritchie, you've already talked on this, and so has Mr. Roberts. Okay, Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gene, question for you is the ground preparation, is that included in the costs now that we have in front of us on this spreadsheet, this shortened up spreadsheet? It's not on there, is it? It is in there.
The one Pauline did is the dirt work, not the one Mr. Fennell gave us.
Okay, all right. I'm getting a better picture. Okay. I'm very comfortable with the substitute motion, and so if we can get moving on the dollar amounts, and I can get my arms wrapped around the entire picture, I'd be a little more comfortable about the larger picture instead of just taking these little piecemeals. So I'm supporting the motion. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Okay, do I have any speakers on the substitute motion just to move this out? Pauline.
And I apologize, this isn't directly, and maybe it is a little bit. If my memory serves me right, I understand Mr. Roberts' concern about getting the Horace Mann pool done, but if I remember correctly, I know some of the users of the pool for competition they were also concerned about if you take down Horace Mann Pool, rebuild Horace Mann Pool, and don't have that competition pool for them, that would be a loss to their community and possible economic impact as well. And so honestly, I don't think you're going to have a perfect timeline for either one of them. I don't know how you make all the parties feel comfortable in what you're doing. But I do think it's important, because of those concerns from both sides of the users, to have both of those in mind with whatever you decide to do. So,
okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you very much, Madam President. You know, I can understand Amanda's logic on this, and I can also very much support what Jerry brought forward and the mayor. It would be nice to just lock this in right now. I hope we can do that. I hope some of my council members will decide to do that. Because once it's locked in, we can discuss the 50-meter pool for the next 2 years. But this will finally give North Rapid some peace of mind that something that's been leaking for 20 years is actually on the schedule to get done. And I would just hope that some of my colleagues would consider that, because I have no doubt that we're going to do the 50-meter pool and the pool at Horace Mann. Unless this comes around to where we decide we're going to do the indoor pool down at Horace Mann, or down at Roosevelt first, and then Horace Mann gets put on the back burner again. So if we could just lock this in right now, if you really truly want to have Horace Mann up there, let's just lock this vision funding in now and be set with it, and we can discuss Roosevelt for the next couple years. Thank you.
Do I have any other comments from my council members? Okay, we're going to take a vote on the substitute motion, which was to discuss this again in 28 days, and let the options, let the partnerships from School of Mines and Mr. Fennell's ideas on saving money on both pools come forward at that time. All in favor for the substitute motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, roll call, please.
Lorente. No. Sasso. Nordstrom. Scott. Clayton. No. Peterson.
Aye.
Lewis. No. Roberts. No. Wright.
No.
4 to 5, motion fails.
Okay, so we'll move on to the motion now to move funding. And Pauline, you said we can't move it all into 2013 at this point?
At this point, all that would be available in 2013 would be the $1.5 million that is currently set aside for the field house.
Okay, is any money set aside for the Horace Mann pool at this point?
Not until 2015 for the Horace Mann pool.
So is this kind of a moot point at this time that we've had this discussion? And
if we want to come up with the $5 million of funding, we're going to have to do some shuffling. Whether it's flip-flopping the Horace Mann and the 50-meter pool and taking the funds from the field house also to get there, and then we could do it in 2-year period.
okay, so we could do it in 2 years. So we're not really moving up the project then.
It would be moved to 13 and 14 instead of 15.
Okay. How to get this done? Mr. Sasso, have you spoken yet tonight? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I've spoken tonight, just not recently. So I would like to make a motion that we, as a council, I'd like to make a motion to move to sideline the field house from consideration at this time, which would leave Horace Mann and the 50-meter pool in the crosshairs as far as with what we would be discussing, and freeing up that motion that would be a substitute. Thank you.
Could you clarify, because I don't really understand your motion. Are you saying we're just shifting the money dedicated to the field house? Or you're saying we're doing away with the potential of an indoor pool?
I would say that we would be doing away with the field house at this time because based on where all our discussions are going, that's really falling at the bottom. I think realistically, we're talking about the shuffling, we're talking about the money, but by removing that, that money would be available. So then we're looking at our discussions are basically on the pools.
Okay, so you're saying shift the money from the field house into the pool funds? And
free that
right,
money
free
up,
that up.
basically,
Okay.
by doing that.
Does he have a
that's
second?
where it would be available.
Okay, I have a second by Scott. Any discussion on just that motion to shift the money that's been funded to the field house into the pool funds? And are you talking about into the Horace Mann pool or both funds, or?
My first choice would be Horace Mann to get that done. I believe that needs to be done. But I think just for sake of not complicating the motion, just leaving it open at this point, because we could end up being here for another 28 days discussing this. And I figure I know at the rate we're going, I'd rather just free that up, get that done, one piece, and we start moving forward at this time. And that can come up again in the future, but right now I think we create some space on the table and some finances.
Okay, is that okay with the second, or is clarification? Are you still on board? I'm still on board. Okay, please limit your discussion only to whether to free up the field house funds to the pool funds. Ms. Scott.
Thank you. Basically, with the information that Pauline has given us, the construction on the Horace Mann pool, even if we were to commit it based on Alderman Wright's motion, would not take effect until 2013 at the earliest anyways. And so, again, it goes back to we've got time. Whether we actually let it out for bid, because the bidding process probably won't happen until 2013, we've got time to discuss this. So I do support the motion to free up the field house. I think the field house needs to be put on the back burner. We are talking about the schools. I am committed to option A for Ward 4, the Horace Mann pool. And I just want to explore any possible money savings that we can get through the bidding process. And I hate to see us lose the economic impact that we would lose, albeit it may even be hard to get the tournaments back out here if we have an interruption in maintaining that 50-meter pool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can't support this motion because I think the field house is an important part of this project. If we can make it happen somehow, I'd hate just to kill it right now. It seems like that's what kind of the intent is. By defunding it, you essentially will kill it. And previous discussions I've had with people, as we've seen earlier in testimony earlier, it's a vital part of cash flowing the aquatic center at this point. So I think we should, getting back to the original motion, which was, 10, 15 years ago at this point, the Horace Mann pool, I think we need to go ahead and start moving forward on that. I have no problem with that, but I don't want to kill the field house right now just to keep on moving forward. I just can't agree with that.
Mayor, help us.
Bonnie, what I'd like to say is that while I understand, Ron, your motion, that adds a layer of complexity that we don't need right now, because what we would be facing is this is a recommending committee to another recommending committee, which is a recommending committee to the council, and if we recommending defunding the defunding, I mean, it's one thing to back burner something, but it's another thing to defund it, and I think if we do that, then we have to remember that there was multiple committees that were involved in this process, and that the stakeholders of the field house would all need to be invited to the table. And so I would encourage you to consider withdrawing your motion, allow a vote on the previous motion. Let's have another meeting within 30 days, and we have a North Rapids Civic Association meeting that Alice McCoy just reminded us of. That's a town hall meeting that night on September 27. And so if you could give us some flexibility in the scheduling, my office will work with Bonnie and council leadership to find a time for a meeting within the next, 4 to 6 weeks.
Mr. Sasso?
I have no problems with withdrawing the motion. My intent basically was back burner on that, just because right now I don't see that on the forefront on the table. So, but I have no problems with withdrawing that motion if that's okay with the seconder as well. And we can.
Okay, Mr. Roberts?
Call the question.
There's been a motion to call the question. Is there any objections to calling the question? Seeing no objection, we will proceed to the vote. Charlene, can you read the motion to us?
The motion is to approve Concept A for Horseman Pool and to fund the $5.5 million.
Okay.
The what?
The dollar amount's less than that. $5,056,000.
Okay, so Pauline, what do you need from us on this? Because it says we're going to fund something. We've already said we're going to fund it. We don't have the money to pay for it right now. So what do you need from us?
Well, sorry. Quite honestly, there could be a friendly amendment to go ahead and add the additional funding necessary to fund Concept A still in 2015, because that's when the rest of the funds become available at this point. That would be the cleanest motion, and it would get it on there where there's full funding for this project to move forward with it. Then when you come back in 4 to 6 weeks, you can discuss how you want to do which pool first, that type of thing. So that would be probably the cleanest at this point.
I accept that friendly amendment, Madam Chair.
Second's okay with
it.
Pauline, we should have gotten you
Point
up
of
here
order.
a lot earlier.
Point of
Okay,
order.
I have Mr. Wright. I don't sure. Did you push your button? I don't see it.
Point of order.
Oh.
We had the question called and we're going into discussion again. So, sorry.
Oh, I thought we'd already voted that we were. Well, no, there was no objections to call the question, so do you need a vote on calling the questions? There was no objection?
No, but
No.
typically you go straight to the vote. You just ask for what I needed, so.
Oh, I see. Well, the reason I did that was because I know we don't have the money, so I don't know what they need for us. So, okay, but thank you, I'm learning, and thanks for helping me out. Mr. Wright. Oh, we're supposed to just discuss, never mind. Right, I know, okay, we're supposed to vote and not discuss. It's getting late. Okay. The motion, as amended. Does anyone need clarification on that? Okay, let's do it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. Okay, I've covered there. Way to go. Okay, we received a motion to adjourn the Vision Fund meeting. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, or let's be here 9:10 to start up the budget. Thank you. You need 10, John? Is that your... Okay.
Okay, everyone, we will call the the second special city council meeting of tonight to order, and this is to discuss the budget. Can we have a roll call?
Peterson. Doyle. Lewis. Roberts. Wright. Lorente. Sasso. Nordstrom. Scott. Clayton. We have quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next order of business is a fiscal year 2013 budget review. As is the tradition, the city council president chairs the budget the budget session, so I will now turn the gavel over to her. I would recommend, though, that based on the lateness of the hour and that you do not have the entire council here, and that you also have second readings scheduled for next week, for Tuesday night, and we've moved all the awards and recognitions to the following council meeting to help with the council meeting agenda on Tuesday night, because we know it's going to be a fairly lengthy agenda with some big items on the agenda. But with that being said, I think there would still be time to discuss the budget on Tuesday night, and if not, you still have a fair amount of time before our deadline of October 1. So, my thoughts. I'll turn the gavel over to Bonnie. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any other council members that are going to be missing Tuesday night? I know Mr. Nordstrom's not going to be there, but I'm just wondering if there's, if we're going to be really short on people or anything for that. Okay. Mr. Lewis, you have your light on. Would you?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn until Tuesday night. And if we have any, as per the mayor's recommendation, if we have anything to discuss budgetary-wise, we can do it at that time. It seems like we've hashed out quite a few of the issues at this point, and I just would like to do that in the interest of time tonight. Thank you.
Was that a second from Sasso? Laurenti. Okay. I'm here, I'm stereo here. I'm hearing both sides. Okay, we have a motion to move this to Tuesday night. Mr. Nordstrom, would you like to comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, I've only got one item that I need to bring up, and if it's all right with the rest of the council, I'll bring that up with an email, and I'll send it off to everybody. If that's okay, I'll split it up so we don't have to worry about open meeting laws by email. So if it's all right, we do have...
I think that would be a good idea, Mr. Nordstrom.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to, or any further comments? Mr. Sasso?
Is that something that you would like us to read at the meeting, just so it is a public record?
Yes, we'll make sure that we bring it up at that time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, yep, that'll work for me.
That's what I was
We've just got to
hoping
get it
for.
on record. Thank you.
Now, I know you're tired tonight, but right now it's 9:20. Okay? Tuesday night, we have a full agenda, and I'm recommending that we move the items, the veto items and the budget items to the end of the agenda so that no one in the audience has to stay unless they really want to, so we're not tying them up. But do keep in mind, you may be even tireder on Tuesday night, so it's your call. I'm open either way. Mr. Lewis?
Just a clarification for my motion once again. I want to adjourn until Tuesday night. If there's further budget things to discuss at that time, we can do it. I don't know if we need a separate budget hearing for that. I just think we'll be discussing the approval. We'll be doing the approval for the second reading of the budget at that time. Is that correct?
It is on the agenda.
So we can
for
discuss
second
those
reading.
items individually at that time, can we not?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so there won't be a need for an extra budget hearing, correct?
That is up to you.
Okay, that was a clarification of my motion. I guess my intention was to
I know
make
there
sure-
are some issues that people want to bring up, and
Right,
so.
but they can do that at that time.
No, they
Right.
can. I'm just pointing out to you,
Okay.
you're tired now, but we may not even start to, on then at 10:30 or 11.
No,
So-
I'm saying, but you can do it during the approval process of the second reading, is my
Yes, you
point I'm
can.
trying to get to. So that's why I want to adjourn until Tuesday night.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Let's take a vote. All in favor of moving the budget items to Tuesday night, say aye. Opposed, say no. All right, it's approved. And do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, and y'all have a great weekend. No, it was Joel and Charlene.